A panicked mathematician rushes into his professor's office. The professor looks up in shock from his work to see one of his students slamming a high school geometry textbook on his desk. "What's wrong?" exclaims the professor. "They've updated the syllabus," the mathematician replies. The professor, still confused, watches the mathematician frantically flip through page after page of textbook until he lands on one littered with questions. "Sir, just look at this math problem," the mathematician explains, pointing to a particular geometry question. "There's a detailed explanation beside it with step-by-step instructions. Now high school students will never be challenged and never retain enough knowledge from mathematics." The professor looks at the question, and sure enough, there was a written procedure to solve each question. "The students won't apply the relating formulas to solve anything because it's already written for them," says the professor in frustration. "Exactly," responds the student. The professor thinks for a moment and then says, "So, these nuclear questions, they're weapons of math destruction." A man is trying to land his dream job of being a barber. For months, he's been studying proper haircutting technique. He has painstakingly flipped through each page of the most rigorous hair textbooks, watched video tutorials from the best salons, and read countless articles about current hairstyles. Finally, it was the day of his job interview. He hit it off really well with his interviewer, impressing her with his deep knowledge of hair culture and barber vocabulary. His interviewer said, "I think you'd be a great addition to this salon, but first I want to see how you do on the practical exam." They both left her office and entered the salon. A model with beautiful hair sat in front of the mirror. "Go ahead and give her a trim," the interviewer told the man. The man was very nervous as he shampooed the model's hair. He brought the model back to her seat and pulled out his scissors. He was so anxious that he just stood there, unable to snip any of her hair. He ran his hands through her hair, trying to determine where best to cut, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. After 10 minutes of waiting, his interviewer stood up and said, "I'm sorry, but we can't offer you a job here. You just didn't make the cut." A guy sits down in a movie theater and notices that the man in front of him has brought his dog, and it's sitting in the seat next to him. He thinks it's unusual, but he likes dogs, so he decides that as long as it's not a distraction, he won't mention it. The movie starts, and pretty soon there's a funny part. The dog makes some low woofing sounds that seem like laughter. In a little while, there's a sad part, and the dog appears to be weeping. This continues throughout the film, and the man sitting behind the dog is astounded. When the lights come up, he taps the dog's owner on the shoulder and tells him, "I have to say, and I know it sounds weird, but it seemed like your dog really enjoyed this movie." The dog owner looks at the dog and nods. "I know, it really is weird," he says, because he absolutely hated the book. Once upon a time in Soviet Russia, a comedy theater invited Joseph Stalin to watch and review their new comedy show just before the premiere. Main character of that comedy is a clumsy guy with a large mustache that is constantly getting into different stupid situations. After the end of the show, all actors, directors, and other personnel gather at the stage and tremulously wait for the resolution of Comrade Stalin. Comrade Stalin, who is the only viewer in an auditorium, slowly lights his pipe and takes a few puffs. "Don't you think that this guy with his mustache looks very much similar to Comrade Stalin?" Stalin takes a few puffs. "I think the right decision will be to execute the director and scriptwriter of that play." A few puffs. "Execute all actors and musicians." A few puffs. "And all other personnel of the theater as well as all their families." Director, actors, and all other staff watch him in total horror, and then speaks some young handyman. "Maybe the actor should shave off his mustache? Or something like that," says Comrade Stalin. After a long stint in prison, Kathy managed to secure herself a job at a candy shop. She arrived on the first day wearing a proper yet practical dress. However, her first day was set to be retrieving candy at the front register. The first customer came, looked at the candy, and asked for licorice. This was on the top shelf, so Kathy had to climb up and down the ladder to get it. The second customer came, checked the candy shelf, and asked for peppermint. These were also on the top shelf, so Kathy had to climb up and down the ladder again. The following customers all also wanted the top shelf candy, forcing Kathy to spend all day going up and down the ladder. At the end of the day, Kathy went to the owner, George, to ask a question. "Hey, so, may I ask, why is all the popular candy on the top shelf?" George looked her up and down. "I don't think it's the candy. They might have wanted to see your undergarments." "Huh, well, the joke's on them. I don't even wear panties." Billy Bob wanted a job as a signalman on the railways. He was told to meet the inspector at the signal box. The inspector asked, "What would you do if you realized that two trains were heading for each other on the same track?" Billy Bob replied, "I would switch the points for one of the trains." "What if the lever broke?" asked the inspector. "Then I'd dash down out of the signal box," said Billy Bob, "and I'd use the manual lever over there." "What if that had been struck by lightning?" "Then," Billy Bob continued, "I'd run back into the signal box and phone the next signal box. What if the phone was busy?" "Well, in that case," persevered Billy Bob, "I'd rush down out of the box and use the public emergency phone at the level crossing up there." "What if that was vandalized?" "Oh, well, then I'd run into town and go get my Uncle Lester." This puzzled the inspector, so he asked, "Why would you do that?" Billy Bob answered, "Well, Uncle Lester has never seen a train wreck." A man has his mother-in-law move in with him when she loses her job. About a week later, he returns home from his job and finds her lying on the floor, unconscious. He calls 911. The ambulance comes and takes her off to the hospital. He calls his wife and tells her she may have to cut her business trip short, but he'll keep her posted. He gets to the hospital and waits outside the surgery, nervous and pacing. Soon the doctor comes out and says he has some good news and some bad news. "Give me the bad news first, Doc." "Well, your mother-in-law had a massive stroke. She's lost her ability to speak and can only cackle like a chicken." The man nods his head. "She's also lost all motor control to her arms and legs, so not only won't she be able to walk, she won't even be able to feed herself. You'll have to feed her baby food for the rest of her life. Every day, 3 times a day." Somberly, the man nods, so the doctor continues. "Without any motor control, she'll also be incontinent, so she'll have to wear diapers for the rest of her life. You'll have to clean her and put a new diaper on her several times a day for the rest of her life." The man nods, processing all this information in his brain, then looks to the doctor and asks, "That's some pretty bad news, but you said you had some good news. What's the good news?" "The good news is I'm just joking with you. She died." A bloke starts his new job at the zoo and is given 3 tasks. First is to clear the exotic fish pool of weeds. As he does this, a huge fish jumps out and bites him. To show who is boss, he beats it to death with a spade. Realizing his employer won't be best pleased, he disposes of the fish by feeding it to the lions, as lions will eat anything. Moving on to the second job of clearing out the chimp house, he is attacked by the chimps, who pelt him with coconuts. He swipes at 2 chimps with a spade, killing them both. What can he do? "Feed them to the lions," he says to himself, because lions eat anything, and hurls the corpses into the lion enclosure. He moves on to the last job, which is to collect honey from the South American bees. As soon as he starts, he is attacked by the bees. He grabs the spade and smashes the bees to a pulp. By now he knows what to do and shovels them into the lion's cage because lions eat anything. Later that day, a new lion arrives at the zoo. He wanders up to another lion and says, "What's the food like here?" The lion says, "Absolutely brilliant. Today we had fish and chips with mushy bees." A society lady runs into the employment office one day and demands a maid right now. It seems she's having a dinner party that night and her maid quit. The guy in the agency explains that all the girls he has right now have just gotten off the boat from Ireland. They're untrained. The lady says she'll train the girl but needs someone right away. The agency guy asks for volunteers and Molly comes forward. She agrees to go and be trained. Well, the dinner party comes and goes, and although some of the guests seem to disappear now and then, everything works out just fine. Molly does a great job. The next morning, the lady's walking down the upstairs hall and sees Molly in one of the guest rooms. Looks like she's making the bed, but she's just standing there. Curious, the woman walks in and looks over Molly's shoulder. There on the bed lies a condom. The lady turns bright red and tries to laugh it off. "Why, Molly," she says. Surely you have those in Ireland, don't you? Molly, sure we do, madam, but we don't skin them. An 80-year-old man was having his annual checkup when the doctor asked how he was feeling. I've never been better, he boasted. I've got an 18-year-old bride who's pregnant and having my child. What do you think about that? The doctor considered this for a moment, then said, let me tell you a story. I knew a guy who was an avid hunter. He never missed a season. But one day he went out in a bit of a hurry and accidentally grabbed his umbrella instead of his gun. Quote, quote. The doctor continued, so he was in the woods and suddenly a grizzly bear appeared in front of him. He raised up his umbrella, pointed it at the bear, and squeezed the handle. And do you know what happened? The doctor queried. Dumbfounded, the old man replied, no, what? The doctor continued, the bear dropped dead in front of him. Quote, quote. That's impossible, Womer, exclaimed the old man. Someone else must have shot the bear. Quote, quote. That's kind of what I'm getting at, replied the doctor. The brothel's madam opened the door to find an elderly gentleman standing there. May I help you? Asked the madam. I want Natalie, replied the man. Sir, Natalie is our most expensive girl. Perhaps someone else? No, I must see Natalie, insisted the man. Just then, Natalie appeared and advised the man that she charges $1,000 a visit. Without blinking an eye, he reached in his pocket and handed her 10 $100 bills. The two of them then went up to a room for an hour of the nitty-gritty, after which the contented fellow left. The next evening he appeared at the brothel again, demanding to see Natalie. Natalie explained that no one had ever come back 2 nights in a row and that there were no discounts. The price was still $1,000. Again, he took out the money and the two of them went up to a room. An hour later, he left. No one could believe it when he showed up the 3rd consecutive night. Again, he demanded to see Natalie, handed her the money, and they went up to a room. After the hour had passed, Natalie questioned him as he lay happily exhausted on the bed. No one in town has ever used my services 3 nights in a row. Where are you from? I'm from Los Angeles, he replied. Really? Natalie said. I have family living there. Yes, I know, the man said. Your father passed away and I'm your sister's attorney. She asked me to personally give you $3,000. A blonde got caught in a blizzard. It was snowing heavily and blowing to the point that visibility was almost zero when the little blonde got off work. She made her way to her car and wondered how she was going to make it home. She sat in her car while it warmed up and thought about her situation. She finally remembered her dad's advice that if she got caught in a blizzard, she should wait for a snowplow to come by and follow it. That way, she would not get stuck in the snowdrift. This made her feel much better, and sure enough, in a little while a snowplow went by and she started to follow it. As she followed the snowplow, she was feeling very smug as they continued, and she was not having any problem with the blizzard conditions. After quite some time had passed, she was somewhat surprised when the snowplow stopped and the driver got out and came back to her car and signaled for her to roll down her window. The snowplow driver wanted to know if she was all right, as she had been following him for a long time. She said that she was fine and told him of her dad's advice to follow a snowplow when caught in a blizzard. The driver replied that it was okay with him and she could continue following if she wanted, but he was done with the Walmart parking lot and was going over to the Kmart next. A man walks into a bar and orders a whiskey. When the barman serves it up, he takes it out to the bench in front of the bar to drink it. As he's enjoying his drink, a nun walks by and glares at him sourly. How can you pollute your soul with the devil's drink like that? She asks. The man shrugs. It's not the devil, it's just whiskey. But it's sinful and wicked. How do you know it's so bad then? Have you ever tasted whiskey? Of course not. My sisters and Mother Superior told me how evil drink is. But how do they know? Have they ever had a drink? They go back and forth like this for a while before at last the nun relents. Well, I suppose that if I were to try a sip of whiskey, I would better understand how it corrupts the soul, but it wouldn't do for any of my sisters to come by here and see me drinking. Could you order me one in a teacup? The man agrees this is fair and walks inside to the barman. 2 whiskeys, but put one in a teacup, please. The barman slams his hand down on the bar and shouts, Is that damn nun here again? A chicken farmer went to a local bar, sat next to a woman, and ordered a glass of champagne. The woman perked up and said, "How about that? I just ordered a glass of champagne, too." "What a coincidence," the farmer said. "This is a special day for me. I am celebrating." "This is a special day for me, too. I am also celebrating," said the woman. "What a coincidence," said the farmer. As they clinked glasses, he added, "What are you celebrating?" "My husband and I have been trying to have a child, and today my gynecologist told me that I am pregnant." "What a coincidence," said the man. "I'm a chicken farmer, and for years all of my hens were infertile, but today they are all laying fertilized eggs." "That's great," said the woman. "How did your chickens become fertile?" "I used a different rooster," he replied. The woman smiled, clinked his glass, and said, "What a coincidence." I had lunch with two of my unmarried friends. One is engaged, one is a mistress, and I have been married for 20-plus years. We were chatting about our relationships and decided to amaze our men by greeting them at the door wearing a black bra, stiletto heels, and a mask over our eyes. We agreed to meet in a few days to exchange notes. Here's how it all went. My engaged friend. The other night when my boyfriend came over, he found me with a black leather bodice, tall stilettos, and a mask. He saw me and said, "You are the woman of my dreams. I love you." Then we made passionate love all night long. The mistress. Me too. The other night I met my lover at his office and I was wearing a raincoat, and under it only the black bra, heels, and mask over my eyes. When I opened the raincoat, he didn't say a word, but he started to tremble and we had wild love all night. Then I had to share my story. When my husband came home, I was wearing the black bra, black stockings, stilettos, and a mask over my eyes. When he came in the door and saw me, he said, "What's for dinner, Zorro?" A 10-year-old boy was failing math. His parents tried everything from tutors to hypnosis, but to no avail. Finally, at the insistence of a family friend, they decided to enroll their son in a private Catholic school. After the first day, the boy's parents were surprised when he walked in after school with a stern, focused, and very determined expression on his face and went right past them straight to his room, where he quietly closed the door. For nearly 2 hours, he toiled away in his room, with math books strewn about his desk and the surrounding floor. He emerged long enough to eat, and after quickly cleaning his plate, went straight back to his room, closed the door, and worked feverishly at his studies until bedtime. This pattern continued ceaselessly until it was time for the first quarter report card. The boy walked in with his report card, unopened, laid it on the dinner table, and went straight to his room. Cautiously, his mother opened it, and to her amazement, she saw a bright red A under the subject of math. Overjoyed, she and her husband rushed into their son's room, thrilled at his remarkable progress. "Was it the nuns that did it?" the father asked. The boy only shook his head and said, "No." "Was it the one-on-one tutoring? The peer mentoring?" "No." "The textbooks? The teachers? The curriculum?" "Nope," said the son. "On that first day, when I walked in the front door and saw that guy they nailed to the plus sign, I just knew they meant business." A 17-year-old boy who works part-time at Pizza Hut drives up to park in front of the house in a beautiful Porsche. Naturally, his parents know that there's no way he earned enough with his after-school job to buy such a car. "Where did you get that car?" his mom and dad screamed in shock. "I bought it today," replied the teen calmly. "With what money, young man?" his mom demands. "We know how much a Porsche costs, and you cannot afford it." "Well, it's used, and I got a good deal," says the boy. "This one cost me $20. "Who on earth would sell a car like that for $20? "The woman up the street," the boy replies. "I don't know her name. She just moved in. She ordered a pizza, and when I delivered it to her, she asked me if I wanted to buy a Porsche for $20. The boy's dad and mom hurry over to their new neighbor's house, ready to demand an explanation. Curiously, their new neighbor is calmly planting flowers in her front yard. "I'm the father of the kid you just sold a sports car to for $20, the dad says. "I need an explanation from you." "Well," the woman says, not looking up from her garden. "This morning I got a phone call from my husband. I thought he was on a business trip in Florida. but it seems he has run off to Hawaii with his secretary and doesn't intend to come back. What on earth does that have to do with selling our son a Porsche for $20? The boy's mom asks, utterly perplexed. The new neighbor smiles very big and pauses for a minute. Well, my husband asked me to sell his new Porsche and send him the money, so I did. A man absolutely hated his wife's cat and decided to get rid of him one day by driving him 20 blocks from his home and leaving him at the park. As he was getting home, the cat was walking up the driveway. The next day, he decided to drive the cat 40 blocks away. He put the beast out and headed home. When he reached his driveway, there was the cat. He kept taking the cat further and further, but the cat would always beat him home. One day, he decided to drive hundreds of miles away. He drove out of town, through the desert, and into the next state until he reached what he thought was a safe distance from his home. He let the cat out and headed back. Hours later, the man calls home to his wife. "Jen, is the cat there?" "Yes," the wife answers. "Why do you ask?" "Put him on the phone," the man replies. "I'm lost and need directions." An infinite loop happens when one action causes another, which causes the first one to repeat forever. It's a concept mostly seen in programming, except sometimes in real life. The CEO tells his secretary, "Next week we're going to a convention abroad and spending some quality time together. Please make the arrangements." The secretary calls her husband. "Next week, the boss is taking me abroad for business. Take care of yourself while I'm gone." The husband calls his lover. "My wife is going abroad next week. Let's spend the time together." The lover, a private school teacher, tells her students, "Due to a personal matter, I won't be at school next week. You'll be studying at home." One of the kids goes to his grandfather. "Grandpa, no school next week. You promised we'd go to the mountains together." The grandfather, also the CEO, calls his secretary. "My grandson wants to spend the week with me, so we won't be going abroad after all." The secretary calls her husband. "The boss canceled. We'll be together after all." The husband calls his lover. "We can't spend the week together. My wife is staying." The lover calls the students. "My problem's been solved. School is back on." The kid goes to his grandfather. "Sorry, Grandpa, school is back on. I can't go." The CEO calls his secretary. "My grandson can't come with me next week. Rebook the flight." The secretary calls her husband, and so on and so on. A rabbit hops into a pub and asks the bartender, "Could I have a pint of beer and a ham and cheese toastie?" The bartender is a bit taken aback but decides to serve the rabbit. The rabbit enjoys his beer, devours the toastie, and leaves. The next night, the rabbit returns and orders the same thing, a pint of beer and a ham and cheese toastie. Word quickly spreads, and the pub is buzzing with curiosity. The bartender serves the rabbit, who enjoys his meal and leaves. By the third night, the pub is packed with eager onlookers. The rabbit orders as usual, and when he finishes his meal, the room erupts in applause. He exits to cheers. On the fourth night, the pub is absolutely packed. People have traveled from all over just to witness this strange and charming guest. The bartender is making more money than he ever thought possible. But when the rabbit walks in and orders his usual, the bartender's face falls. "I'm sorry, my friend," he says, "but we're all out of ham and cheese toasties." The rabbit looks stunned, and the pub goes silent. The bartender, desperate, quickly offers, "But we do have a lovely cheese and onion toastie. I'm sure you'll love it." The rabbit eyes him warily. "Are you sure?" he asks. With a reassuring grin, the bartender replies, "Trust me, you'll love it." "All right," says the rabbit. "I'll have a pint of beer and a cheese and onion toastie." The pub erupts in cheers as the rabbit enjoys his new meal, waves to the crowd, and leaves, never to return. A year later, the pub is in decline. The bartender, who has only served a handful of drinks that night, most of them to himself, calls last orders. As he cleans up, he notices a small white figure hovering above the bar. "Who are you?" he asks. "I'm the ghost of the rabbit who used to visit your pub," replies the ghost. The bartender's eyes widen. "I remember you. You made this place famous. Every night, you'd come in for a pint of beer and a ham and cheese toastie. People came from miles around just to see you." "Yes," the rabbit ghost replies. "But I also remember that last night when you ran out of ham and cheese toasties and gave me a cheese and onion toastie instead." That's right, the bartender recalls. But then you never came back. What happened? The rabbit pauses before replying, I died. The bartender gasps. No, how? The rabbit ghost looks at him and says, Mixin' me toasties. One November afternoon, I picked up my daughter from kindergarten. She bounced into the car, buckled herself into the back seat, and practically exploded with excitement. Guess what we learned today? She chirped. What's that? I asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. We learned that boys are different from girls, she announced proudly. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Oh? I said cautiously. Yep, my teacher told us that boys have a thing and girls don't. Well, technically true. I nodded, unsure of where this was going. She continued, That's how girls know boys are boys. They see that thing that hangs down, and that's when they know. I did some quick mental math. We were still 5 minutes from home. This was already the longest car ride of my life. Then she added, And when boys see girls, they puff up. I could feel my palms start to sweat. Well, she wasn't finished. Why do girls like boys to have those things? I opened my mouth, then closed it. What woman hasn't asked herself that question at least once? Well, honey, I stammered, trying to think of an answer. Luckily, she had her own explanation. It's because it moves when they walk. The girls see that, and that's how they know they're boys. Then the boy sees the girl, and he puffs up, and the girl knows he likes her. Then they get married. She paused for dramatic effect, then delivered the kicker. And then they get cooked. I blinked. Wait, what? By then, we had pulled into the garage. She hopped out of the car and proudly fished something out of her backpack. I drew a picture, she beamed. Want to see? I wasn't sure I did, but I looked anyway, and there it was, a glorious puffed-up tom turkey. His snood, that thing that hangs over his beak, the thing female turkeys apparently find irresistible, was magnificent. His tail feathers stood tall and proud. I laughed so hard, I cried. She was a little offended at first, but when I told her I absolutely loved her drawing, and I did, she forgave me. That was the end of it for her. For me, not so much. Because every year since, when Thanksgiving rolls around, I remember that conversation. And to be honest, I haven't looked at a turkey or a man the same way since. An elderly couple were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, so they decided to return to the little town where they first met. They sat in a small coffee shop in the town and were telling the waitress about their love for each other and how they met at this same spot. Sitting next to them was the local cop, and he smiled as the old couple spoke. After the waitress left the table, the old man said to his wife, Remember the first time we made love? It was up in that field across the road when I put you against the fence. Why don't we do it again for old time's sake? The wife giggled like crazy and said, Sure, why not? So off they went out the door and across to the field. The cop smiled to himself, thinking how romantic this was, and decided he better keep an eye on the couple so they didn't run into any harm. The old couple walked to the field, and as they approached the fence, they began to undress. The old man picked up his wife when they were naked and leaned her against the fence. The cop was watching from the bushes and was surprised at what he saw. With the vitality of youth, the wife bounced up and down excitedly, while the husband thrashed around like a wild man, and then they both fell to the ground in exhaustion. Eventually, they stood up, shook themselves, and got dressed, as they walked back towards the road. The cop stepped from his hiding spot and said, That is the most wonderful lovemaking I have ever seen. You must have been a wild couple when you were young. Not really, said the old man. When we were young, that fence wasn't electric. An elderly couple were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, so they decided to return to the little town where they first met. They sat in a small coffee shop in the town and were telling the waitress about their love for each other and how they met at this same spot. Sitting next to them was the local cop, and he smiled as the old couple spoke. After the waitress left the table, the old man said to his wife, Remember the first time we made love? It was up in that field across the road when I put you against the fence. Why don't we do it again for old time's sake? The wife giggled like crazy and said, "Sure, why not?" So off they went out the door and across to the field. The cop smiled to himself, thinking how romantic this was, and decided he better keep an eye on the couple so they didn't run into any harm. The old couple walked to the field, and as they approached the fence, they began to undress. The old man picked up his wife when they were naked and leaned her against the fence. The cop was watching from the bushes and was surprised at what he saw. With the vitality of youth, the wife bounced up and down excitedly, while the husband thrashed around like a wild man, and then they both fell to the ground in exhaustion. Eventually, they stood up, shook themselves, and got dressed, as they walked back towards the road. The cop stepped from his hiding spot and said, "That is the most wonderful lovemaking I have ever seen. You must have been a wild couple when you were young." "Not really," said the old man. "When we were young, that fence wasn't electric."